print, my stencil is cut. The first thing I need is newsprint paper to protect my table. It's just going to make cleanup a lot easier. I also need now a piece of computer paper. That's what I'm going to print on. And I want you to try to do 2 prints of your stencil. So I'm going to put this horizontally so I can print on the left and then move it and print it on the right. So I have on my desk newsprint paper, computer paper that I'm printing on, my stencil on top of that, and then I'm going to grab a screen, which is an embroidery ring that's the right size. Now I have 2 different sizes. One's larger than the other. You want it to be as close in size as possible. This is almost too small, but I'm going to use it because it's really nice and tight. I want to make sure that the fabric is pulled nice and tight so that my screen here doesn't move. You don't want this to be really wiggly because it'll move your stencil. So this silkscreen ink will stain clothes. So I am actually wearing a smock. There are smocks behind the red door behind me that says future are hanging smocks. So if you have clothes you don't want to get stained, I would highly recommend wearing them. Now because this is such a small screen, I don't need a lot of ink. I'm just going to take my stick, and notice I'm dropping the ink on there. I'm not touching the screen with the stick. That is more than enough ink. Think of it as like brushing your teeth with enough toothpaste. That's a lot of toothpaste. Now for this small embroidery ring, I'm going to use this little piece of cardstock as my squeegee. I'm going to carefully hold this embroidery ring down with my left hand. When you get to do larger screen prints, you might have some classmates at your table help you hold the screen down. But now, holding everything in place, I'm going to rotate my squeegee, spreading the ink between, making sure that it gets inside all the holes of the stencil. See, I missed a spot right there, so I'm going to go ahead and go over that. Now, I don't want to go over this too much because I'm using a paper stencil that when it gets wet with ink, it starts to disintegrate a little bit. So I'm just going to make sure that's all scraped up. You don't want globs of ink. Now, when I lift this straight up, my stencil is going to stick to my embroidery ring. You kind of want that if you're going to do a second print. So I'm going to pull the computer paper up, and there is my print. Now I did get a little bit of bleeding if you look under the lips. That's just because I probably hit that area twice. So I'm going to carefully lift this up, move it over to the right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to rotate this paper because I want to keep working in this space. So now I'm going to lay my stencil right back down as carefully as I can. And because the ink is still on here, maybe I'll use the stick to kind of scrape that back into my screen, drop that ink in there again. Now this time it's going to be a little bit harder to see where the ink has already gone because my screen is covered in black. That's okay. I'm just going to take my time. This is practice anyway. This is learning the process of silk screening. So I'm going to take my brayer or squeegee, sorry, and rub that ink around there. Not too many times. Twice is more than enough. And all this extra ink I'm going to scrape back into the cup because I'm now done. So I don't want to waste any ink. From there, again, grab my stencil and lift it up very carefully. And voila. The second one bled more because now my computer paper is starting to get saturated and that ink is bleeding through. But that's okay. So you can see now I have 2 prints. From here, I can decide if I peel this off very carefully, I can save this, so I'm going to. And what I want to do is take a piece of cardboard that's over by the drying rack, and I'm going to lay my stencil face up because I want to save it. If you don't want to save it, because this is all practice anyway, you can go ahead and just throw it in the garbage. Now for your paper print, you're going to take another piece of cardboard, place your print on top of that, and these are going to go in the drying rack. The reason you need the cardboard is so that these don't fall through the slots in the drying rack. Now the last thing, this screen, if I let it dry, it's going to clog all those holes and no one else will be able to use it. So it's really important to immediately go to the sink, rinse it in the sink, and on the top left is a drying rack. Just to show you really quickly, when you wash in the sink, use these round sponges. Lay this flat in the sink, and as the sink is running, you're going to rub the sponge inside there, the small round sponges, and then the top left rec. There are big rectangle sponges in there. Do not use those. Those are for the pottery studio. These little cardboard squeegees, you can give to me. I will recycle them. I'm just going to, for now, put this in my paper towel after washing my hands. And really quickly, I'm going to show you how to do a screen that's a little bit bigger. Again, I've got my newsprint down, my computer paper down. I'm going to put my other stencil down this time. These eyes are a little funky, so I'm actually going to remove the tape because I don't like the way that's stenciled, and lay the eye there and do the same thing. So now the beauty of this is the screen will hold these eyes in place, so they should not move as I screen print. So this time I'm going to use the larger embroidery screen. Let me move this up a little bit and lay this carefully. So notice this is bigger, there's more of an area. So I'm going to use my plastic squeegee, a little bit more ink, not too much. Again, holding this in place, same thing. Now this, I have more room, I can go up and down like that. Although, because I have a circle, I'm still going to go around. Now, again, I don't want to hit it too many times. I'm going to lay this face up like this so that I can come back to it. I don't want to hit it too much because remember the last time I got bleeding. So, again, I'm picking it up by the stencil, lifting it carefully. Notice the stencil is now sticking to my screen. I'm going to move that. And again, I got a little bit of bleeding. I'm not too concerned about it though, because when you do this on fabric, you'll get less bleeding, I promise. So I'm going to go ahead and do my second print. I don't want my stencil to hit my first print because I don't want it to ruin it. So again, I'm going to lay that down. I still have ink here, so making sure that that part of the ink is face down, I'm just going to go around and hit this once because I don't want that bleeding again. And I know I'm done this time, so I'm going to take my ink, scrape it back in. This now you're going to want to clean in the sink using the sponge after you've scraped off as much ink as you can back into the bin. And then again, these you can also keep on top of the sink. But when I lift this, let me grab the stencil again. And again, a little bit of bleeding. So my first print is better. But again, from here, I now want to take my cardboard and put my print on there, put that on the drying rack, and my stencil now, this one's going to be a little more fragile, I'm going to put on cardboard. And again, I'm just saving this because I'm going to use these for my demo. I'm going to very, very carefully peel this face up. Notice the eyes are stuck to my screen, so I'm just going to get my hands messy. Maybe not save those, I don't know. But again, the most important thing is going over to the sink. We're going to pretend that newsprint is my sink. I'm going to lay this screen face down with my wet sponge as the water's running through it. I want to get all of this clean because if the ink gets stuck in there, it's going to clog up my screen. So I'm doing this in the sink pretending, but notice now the screen is a lot cleaner. I'm going to go do that now in the sink again just to get all of that out and then leave it in the drying rack.